The morning sun cast long shadows across Camp Pendleton as Private First Class Maria Rodriguez pushed her broom across the barracks floor. The rhythmic scraping sound echoed through the empty hallway, a sound that had become as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. For 3 months now, this had been her daily routine: sweeping, mopping, cleaning bathrooms, and emptying trash cans while her fellow soldiers trained with weapons and tactics. Maria had joined the army with dreams of serving her country on the front lines. She had scored in the top 10% on her physical fitness tests and excelled in marksmanship during basic training. Her drill sergeants had praised her quick thinking and natural leadership abilities, but somehow, those accomplishments seemed to have been forgotten the moment she arrived at this base. Rodriguez, Sergeant Mitchell's voice boomed down the hallway. "When you're done playing housewife, the officer's mess needs cleaning too." Maria gripped the broom handle tighter but kept her expression neutral. "Yes, Sergeant," she replied, her voice steady despite the burning anger in her chest. Sergeant Mitchell was a tall, heavy-set man who seemed to take particular pleasure in assigning Maria to cleaning duties. Behind him stood Corporal James Wheeler and Private Danny Costa, 2 soldiers who had arrived at the base the same week as Maria. While they spent their days on the shooting range and in tactical training exercises, Maria spent hers with cleaning supplies. "You know, Rodriguez," Corporal Wheeler said with a smirk, "maybe the army made a mistake. You'd probably be happier as a hotel maid." His comment drew laughter from the other men. Maria had heard worse, much worse, but each insult felt like a small knife cutting away at her dreams. She had grown up in a working-class family in San Antonio, Texas. Her father, a mechanic, had worked double shifts to support the family. Her mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. Maria had joined the military not just to serve her country, but to prove that a girl from the wrong side of town could make something of herself. "At least she keeps the place clean," Private Costa added. "That's about all she's good for anyway." As the men walked away, their laughter echoing off the walls, Maria continued sweeping. She had learned not to respond to their taunts. Fighting back would only give them more ammunition and potentially land her in serious trouble. Instead, she channeled her frustration into her work, scrubbing floors until they gleamed and organizing supply closets with military precision. The truth was, Maria was being deliberately kept away from combat training. She had overheard conversations between Sergeant Mitchell and other non-commissioned officers. They believed women didn't belong in combat roles, despite official military policy stating otherwise. They thought she would crack under pressure, that she would endanger the lives of real soldiers. But Maria knew something they didn't. Every evening, after her cleaning duties were finished, she snuck out to a secluded area behind the motor pool. There, using techniques she had learned from her older brother who served 2 tours in Afghanistan, she practiced combat drills. She ran obstacle courses she had built herself from discarded equipment. She practiced hand-to-hand combat moves against imaginary opponents. Her brother, Staff Sergeant Miguel Rodriguez, had taught her that the military could be unfair, especially to people like them. "The system will try to break you down, Maria," he had told her before her deployment. "But if you're strong enough, if you're smart enough, you'll find a way to prove yourself. Just wait for your moment." As Maria finished sweeping the last hallway of the barracks, she noticed something unusual. Through the window, she could see a group of elite soldiers conducting training exercises in the distance. These weren't regular army personnel. Their equipment was different, their movements more precise and coordinated. She had heard rumors that Navy SEALs sometimes trained at this base, but she had never seen them up close. One figure caught her attention. A tall, lean man with graying hair at his temples moved with the fluid grace of someone who had seen real combat. Even from a distance, there was something about his bearing that commanded respect. He seemed to be observing the other soldiers, rather than participating in the exercise. That as Maria watched, the man turned in her direction. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the courtyard. She quickly looked away, embarrassed to be caught staring, and focused on her broom that evening. As Maria prepared for her secret training session, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. She had been at this base for 3 months, enduring insults and menial tasks while watching less qualified soldiers advance in their training. But she had also been preparing, getting stronger, and waiting for her chance to prove herself. That she laced up her boots and prepared to head out to her makeshift training area. Maria caught sight of herself in the small mirror above her bunk. She saw determination in her dark eyes, the same look her father had when he worked on a particularly challenging engine repair. The same look her mother had when she refused to let poverty defeat their family's spirit. Tomorrow would be another day of sweeping floors and cleaning bathrooms. Another day of enduring insults and being treated as invisible. But Maria Rodriguez was far from broken. She was preparing for something bigger, even if she didn't yet know what that something would be. The sound of helicopters in the distance reminded her that this was a military base, not a cleaning service. Somewhere out there, real missions were being planned, real operations were being conducted, and somehow, some way, Maria was going to find her place in that world. She just had to be ready when the opportunity came. 2 weeks had passed since Maria first noticed the elite soldiers training on the base. During that time, the treatment from her fellow soldiers had only gotten worse. It seemed that Sergeant Mitchell and his group had decided that Maria needed to be driven out of the military entirely. Rodriguez, Sergeant Mitchell's voice cut through the morning air like a whip. You missed a spot in the latrine, do it again. All of it. Maria looked at the bathroom she had just spent 2 hours cleaning. Every surface gleamed, every fixture sparkled. There was no missed spot. This was just another attempt to humiliate her, but she nodded and reached for her cleaning supplies. And, this time, Corporal Wheeler added with a cruel smile, use a toothbrush for the grout. We want it perfect. As Maria knelt on the bathroom floor, scrubbing tile grout with a toothbrush while grown men stood over her laughing, she felt something inside her chest grow cold and hard. This wasn't about military discipline or maintaining standards. This was about breaking her spirit. My grandmother could do a better job, Private Costa commented, and she's been dead for 5 years. The laughter that followed was like nails on a chalkboard to Maria's ears. But she kept scrubbing, kept her head down, and tried to remember her brother's words about waiting for her moment. Later that afternoon, while Maria was emptying trash cans in the administrative building, she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. The Rodriguez girl needs to go, Sergeant Mitchell was saying to someone on the phone. I don't care what her test scores were. She's not combat material, and she's taking up space that could go to a real soldier. I've been documenting every little mistake. Another voice added it was Lieutenant Peterson, the base's personnel officer. Missing spots during cleaning, being late to formation by 30 seconds, uniform infractions will have enough to recommend her for discharge. Within the month, Maria's hands tightened around the trash bag. They were building a false case against her, manufacturing reasons to kick her out of the army. Everything she had worked for, everything she had dreamed of, was being systematically destroyed by men who had decided she didn't belong before giving her a real chance. That evening, Maria's secret training session was more intense than usual. She attacked her homemade obstacle course with a fury that surprised even her. She practiced combat moves with a precision born of desperation. Every push-up, every sprint, every tactical maneuver was fueled by the injustice burning in her chest. As she finished her workout, breathing heavily in the darkness behind the motor pool, she heard footsteps approaching. Maria quickly grabbed her gear, ready to run if she had been discovered. Being caught training without permission would give Sergeant Mitchell exactly the ammunition he needed to have her discharged immediately. But the figure that emerged from the shadows wasn't Sergeant Mitchell or any of his cronies. It was the elite soldier she had noticed weeks earlier, the tall, lean man with graying temples and the bearing of someone who had seen real combat. Don't stop on my account, the man said quietly. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to command, but there was no hostility in it. Maria stood at attention, her heart pounding. Sir, I was just training, the man finished. I know. I've been watching you for the past 2 weeks. The words sent a chill down Maria's spine. If this man reported her unauthorized training sessions, her military career would be over before dawn. What's your name? Soldier, he asked. Private First Class Maria Rodriguez, sir. Rodriguez, the man seemed to consider this. You're the one they have cleaning the barracks all day. It wasn't a question, and Maria wasn't sure how to respond. Yes, sir. Interesting assignment for someone who scored expert marksman in basic training and finished in the top 5% of her physical fitness tests. Maria's eyes widened. How did this man know about her scores? Those records weren't public information. Tell me, Rodriguez, what do you think of your current duties? The question was clearly a test. Answer honestly, and she might be accused of insubordination. Lie, and this man would probably see right through her. I serve where the army needs me, sir, she said carefully. Diplomatic answer. The man stepped closer, and Maria could see his face more clearly in the moonlight. He had kind eyes, but there were lines around them that spoke of difficult decisions and heavy responsibilities, but not an honest one. For a long moment they stood in silence. Then the man did something unexpected. He smiled. My name is Commander Jack Sullivan, Navy SEALs. and I think you and I need to have a conversation." Maria felt her world shift slightly. A Navy SEAL commander wanted to talk to her. This had to be some kind of setup, another test designed to trap her. "I know what you're thinking," Commander Sullivan continued. "You're wondering if this is a trap. You're wondering if I'm working with Mitchell and his boys to find another reason to kick you out." The accuracy of his assessment was unsettling. "Here's what I know, Rodriguez. I know you've been systematically excluded from combat training despite having the scores and physical ability to excel. I know you've been assigned to cleaning duties as a form of punishment for the crime of being a woman in a boys' club. And I know you've been out here every night for the past month, training yourself because no one else will." Maria's throat felt tight. Someone had finally seen what was happening to her. Someone finally understood. "I also know," Commander Sullivan continued, "that in 3 days, Sergeant Mitchell is planning to recommend you for discharge, based on a fabricated file of minor infractions and alleged performance issues." The words hit Maria like a physical blow. 3 days. She had 3 days before her military career was over, before she would have to return home in shame and explain to her family why she had failed. "But," Commander Sullivan said, his voice taking on a different tone, "I might have a proposition for you, something that could change everything." Maria looked up at him, hope and fear warring in her chest. "There's going to be a training exercise tomorrow night, a simulated hostage rescue scenario. Some of my SEALs will be playing the hostages, and a group of your fellow soldiers will be attempting the rescue. It's designed to be challenging. Most rescue attempts fail." Maria wasn't sure where this was going, but she listened intently. "I want you to be there, Rodriguez. Not as a cleaner, not as a support person, but as a participant. I want to see what you can really do when given a chance." The offer was everything Maria had dreamed of, but it was also terrifying. If she failed, it would confirm everything Sergeant Mitchell and the others believed about her. If she succeeded, well, she wasn't sure what would happen then either. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for me?" Commander Sullivan was quiet for a moment, looking out into the darkness beyond the base. "Because 20 years ago, I was a young soldier who almost got drummed out of the service because some people didn't think I belonged. Someone gave me a chance to prove myself. I've never forgotten that." He turned to face her directly. "Tomorrow night, Rodriguez, you get your chance. Don't waste it." Maria barely slept that night. Commander Sullivan's words echoed in her mind as she lay in her narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow night, she would finally get the chance she had been dreaming of for months. But the weight of expectation felt crushing. This wasn't just about proving herself, it was about proving that everything Sergeant Mitchell and his cronies believed was wrong. The next morning brought a new level of hostility from her tormentors. It was as if they could sense that something was about to change. "Rodriguez," Sergeant Mitchell barked as she reported for duty. "The base commander's office needs a deep clean. I want every piece of furniture moved, every corner scrubbed. And you better not break anything, or it's coming out of your pay." As Maria spent the day cleaning the base commander's office, she couldn't help but notice the commendations and photos on the walls. Pictures of soldiers in combat zones, medals for valor, certificates recognizing acts of heroism. This was the world she wanted to be part of, the world she had been shut out of for months. Around noon, Corporal Wheeler appeared in the doorway with a smug expression. "Heard an interesting rumor, Rodriguez," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Word is, you're getting discharged soon. Something about poor performance and attitude problems." Maria continued dusting, not trusting herself to speak. "It's probably for the best," Wheeler continued. "The army's no place for someone like you anyway. Maybe you can get a job as a janitor somewhere. At least you're good at that." As Wheeler walked away, laughing at his own joke, Maria felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest. But today, that anger felt different. Today, it felt like fuel. That evening, as the sun set over Camp Pendleton, Maria made her way to the designated training area. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She had changed into her combat uniform, the same uniform she had worn during basic training, but which had been gathering dust in her footlocker for months. The training area had been set up to simulate an urban environment. Plywood buildings, narrow alleys, and strategic obstacles created a maze-like setting. Maria could see figures moving in the shadows, the Navy SEALs who would be playing the hostages, and the soldiers who would attempt to rescue them. Commander Sullivan appeared beside her, seemingly materializing out of the darkness. "You ready for this, Rodriguez?" "Yes, sir," Maria replied, though her voice came out more breathless than she intended. "The scenario is simple," Sullivan explained. 3 hostages are being held in the central building. The enemy has superior numbers and position. The rescue team has to get in, neutralize the threats, and get the hostages out alive. Most teams focus on firepower and direct assault. Maria nodded, trying to absorb every detail. Your team consists of 4 soldiers from your unit, Sullivan continued, including Sergeant Mitchell. Maria's blood ran cold. She would be working with the same man who had been trying to destroy her military career. He doesn't know you're on the team yet, Sullivan added with a slight smile. That should make things interesting. As they approached the staging area, Maria could see Sergeant Mitchell briefing the other team members, Corporal Wheeler, Private Costa, and Private Johnson, a newer recruit who had always followed Mitchell's lead. Mitchell looked up as they approached, and his face went through a series of expressions: confusion, anger, and finally, cold fury. What is she doing here? He demanded, pointing at Maria. Private Rodriguez is your 5th team member, Commander Sullivan replied calmly. The exercise requires 5 participants. I don't need dead weight on my team, Mitchell snarled. She'll get us all killed. And I guess you'll have to make sure she doesn't, Sullivan said. His tone was pleasant, but there was steel underneath it that made even Mitchell take a step back. For the next few minutes, Mitchell tried to argue, but Sullivan was unmovable. Maria was on the team, and that was final. As Sullivan walked away, Mitchell turned to Maria with a look of pure hatred. Listen to me, Rodriguez, he hissed, getting close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. You're going to stay in the back and keep your mouth shut. You're going to follow orders, without question, and when this exercise is over and we've failed because of you, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly whose fault it was. The other team members nodded in agreement. Maria was alone, surrounded by people who wanted her to fail. The exercise began at exactly 2,100 hours. Mitchell led the team toward the central building using what Maria immediately recognized as a flawed approach. He was planning a direct frontal assault, exactly the kind of strategy that would get them all killed in a real situation. Sergeant, Maria said quietly, I think there might be a better approach. Did I ask for your opinion? Mitchell snapped. Keep your mouth shut and follow orders. As they moved through the simulated urban environment, Maria could see the flaws in their approach multiplying. The enemy positions were well concealed, with overlapping fields of fire. A direct assault would be suicide. But Mitchell pressed forward, convinced that superior firepower would win the day. Within minutes their position was compromised. Simulated gunfire erupted from multiple directions, and one by one the team members were killed by the exercise controllers. First Private Johnson, caught in the open while following Mitchell's orders to advance. Then Corporal Wheeler, pinned down by crossfire he never saw coming. Private Costa lasted a few minutes longer, but his position was hopeless from the start. Finally, it was just Maria and Sergeant Mitchell, trapped behind a concrete barrier while simulated bullets flew overhead. This is your fault, Mitchell growled at her. Your bad luck rubbed off on the whole team. But Maria wasn't listening. She was studying the enemy positions, calculating angles and distances, formulating a plan that might actually work. Everything she had learned during her secret training sessions was coming together in her mind. Sergeant, she said urgently, I know a way to get to the hostages. Forget it, Rodriguez. We're done. This exercise is over. Sir, please, just listen to me for 30 seconds. Something in her voice made Mitchell pause. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was the confidence that had crept into her tone. There's a drainage pipe that runs under the central building, Maria explained quickly. I saw it during my cleaning duties last week. It connects to the maintenance tunnels. If I can get to it, I can come up inside the building, behind the enemy positions. Mitchell stared at her. That's insane. Even if the pipe exists, you'd be going in alone, with no backup. It's better than staying here and failing, Maria replied. For a moment, Mitchell seemed torn between his hatred of Maria and his competitive desire to win the exercise. Finally, his ego won out. Fine, he said, but when you get yourself killed, don't expect me to come after you. Maria didn't wait for him to change his mind. She low-crawled away from their position, moving through shadows and using cover techniques. She had practiced behind the motor pool. The drainage pipe was exactly where she remembered it, half hidden behind a pile of construction materials. The pipe was narrow and filled with stagnant water, but Maria squeezed through it, her heart hammering. With adrenaline, she could hear the sounds of the exercise above her shouts, simulated gunfire, the voices of the exercise controllers. When she finally emerged inside the central building, Maria found herself in a maintenance room in the basement. She could hear voices above her, the enemies discussing their positions and the hostages playing their roles, moving like a ghost. Maria made her way up a service stairway. She had studied the building's layout during her cleaning assignments, and that knowledge was now saving her life. The first enemy position was at the end of a hallway. 2 soldiers with their backs to her, focused on the windows facing the direction Mitchell's team had been approaching from. Maria moved up behind them silently and whispered, "Bang, bang, you're dead." The exercise controllers confirmed the kills to down. The second position was trickier. 3 soldiers in a room with good visibility in all directions. But Maria had noticed something during her reconnaissance. There was a ventilation grate near the ceiling that led to the room where the hostages were being held. Using skills she had taught herself, Maria climbed into the ventilation system and crawled through the narrow space until she was directly above the hostages. 3 Navy SEALs were sitting on chairs, playing their roles perfectly. Maria dropped down into the room just as the remaining enemy soldiers realized their perimeter had been breached. She had perhaps 30 seconds before they would storm the room. "Stay down," she told the hostages, though she knew they were probably better soldiers than she would ever be. When the door burst open, Maria was ready. Using the room's layout to her advantage, she eliminated the remaining threats one by one, her training and natural instincts finally getting the chance to shine. "Exercise complete," came the voiceover. The radio, "All hostages secure, all enemy combatants neutralized." In the sudden silence that followed, Maria stood in the middle of the room, hardly believing what had just happened. She had done it. She had succeeded where everyone expected her to fail. The Navy SEALs who had been playing hostages stood up, and one of them, a weathered veteran with kind eyes, extended his hand. "Hell of a job, soldier," he said with genuine respect. But the real test was yet to come. Maria would have to face Sergeant Mitchell and the others, and she wasn't sure what their reaction would be to her success. The debriefing room was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Maria sat at a metal table, still in her combat uniform, still processing what had just happened. Around her sat the other members of her team, Sergeant Mitchell, Corporal Wheeler, Private Costa, and Private Johnson. Their faces showed a mixture of shock, confusion, and barely contained anger. At the front of the room, Commander Sullivan stood next to Major Patricia Hayes, the base's operations officer. They had been reviewing footage from the exercise, footage that showed every moment of Maria's successful rescue mission. "Ladies and gentlemen," Major Hayes began, her voice crisp and professional. "What we just witnessed was a textbook example of tactical innovation under pressure. Private Rodriguez identified a fatal flaw in the team's initial strategy, formulated an alternative approach, and executed a successful rescue mission with 0 casualties." Sergeant Mitchell's face was red with suppressed rage. "Ma'am, with all due respect, Rodriguez got lucky. She broke protocol by abandoning her team. She improvised when the original plan failed." Major Hayes interrupted, "Which is exactly what we train our soldiers to do." Commander Sullivan stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Tell me, Sergeant, what was your assessment of Private Rodriguez's performance during this exercise?" Mitchell's jaw worked silently for a moment. Finally, he said, She performed adequately." "Adequately?" Sullivan's eyebrows rose. "She single-handedly completed a mission that your entire team failed to accomplish. She demonstrated tactical awareness, physical conditioning, marksmanship, skills, and strategic thinking, and you call that adequate?" The room fell silent. Maria could feel the tension radiating from her teammates like heat from a furnace. "Perhaps," Major Hayes said, consulting a file in front of her, "we should discuss why Private Rodriguez has been assigned exclusively to cleaning duties for the past 3 months. Despite scoring in the top tier of her basic training class." Mitchell shifted uncomfortably. She was assigned duties appropriate to her experience level. Sullivan's voice had grown dangerously quiet. "Let's talk about experience. Sergeant Rodriguez has been at this base for 3 months. In that time, she has received 0 advanced combat training, 0 weapons qualifications, and 0 leadership development opportunities. Meanwhile, soldiers who scored lower than her in every category have advanced to specialized training programs." Maria watched the exchange with growing amazement. Someone was finally standing up for her, finally calling out the injustice she had endured for months. "Furthermore," Major Hayes continued, "there seems to be some confusion about Private Rodriguez's performance record. According to Sergeant Mitchell's reports, she has been consistently late to formations, has failed to maintain uniform standards, and has shown poor attention to detail in her assigned duties." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. However, according to independent verification, Private Rodriguez has never been late to a single formation, her uniform has never failed inspection, and the areas she's responsible for cleaning have consistently received the highest ratings from base inspectors. Corporal Wheeler and Private Costa exchanged nervous glances. The web of lies they had helped construct was unraveling before their eyes. "So I have to ask," Major Hayes said, fixing Sergeant Mitchell with a steady stare, "why there's such a discrepancy between your reports and the documented facts?" Mitchell's face had gone from red to pale. "There may have been some administrative errors. Sullivan's voice cut through the excuse like a blade, or deliberate falsification of records. The accusation hung in the air like a thunderclap. Maria felt her heart racing. This was bigger than she had imagined. This wasn't just about unfair treatment, this was about corruption, about the systematic destruction of her military career. But Major Hayes opened another file. "We've also received some interesting information about comments made by base personnel regarding Private Rodriguez's fitness for military service. Comments that seemed to be based on gender rather than actual performance." Wheeler and Costa were now looking distinctly uncomfortable. Johnson, the newest member of the group, looked confused and frightened. "I want to be very clear about something," Major Hayes continued, her voice taking on a tone of absolute authority. "The United States military does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. We do not tolerate the falsification of records, and we do not tolerate the systematic sabotage of a soldier's career based on personal prejudice." She closed the file with a sharp snap. "Effective immediately, Sergeant Mitchell, you are relieved of your current duties pending a formal investigation. Corporal Wheeler and Private Costa, you will also be subject to disciplinary review." The words hit the room like bombs. Mitchell started to protest, but Major Hayes held up a hand to stop him. "This meeting is concluded. Sergeant Mitchell, report to the base commander's office at 0800 hours tomorrow. Wheeler, Costa, you'll receive your orders shortly." As the disgraced soldiers filed out of the room, Mitchell paused at the door and turned back to look at Maria. The hatred in his eyes was unmistakable, but now it was mixed with something else, fear. "This isn't over, Rodriguez," he said quietly. "Yes, it is," Commander Sullivan replied before Maria could speak. "It's very much over." After the others had left, Maria found herself alone with Sullivan and Major Hayes. She still couldn't quite believe what had just happened. "Private Rodriguez," Major Hayes said, her tone much warmer now. "I owe you an apology. What happened to you should never occur in the United States military. We failed you, and I'm sorry." Maria felt tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. After months of being treated like she was worthless, having a superior officer apologize to her was almost overwhelming. "Thank you, ma'am," she managed to say. Commander Sullivan pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "Maria, can I call you Maria? I have a proposition for you." She nodded, not trusting her voice. "My team is currently short one member. We have a mission coming up that requires someone with your particular skill set, someone who can think creatively, who can adapt under pressure, and who has something to prove." Maria's eyes widened. "You're offering me a position with the SEALs?" "Not exactly," Sullivan smiled. "You're Army, not Navy. But we do joint operations, and we need a liaison officer, someone who knows both worlds. The position would require additional training, specialized qualifications, and a significant commitment. But," Major Hayes added, "it would also fast-track your advancement and give you the kind of career opportunities you originally enlisted for." Maria felt like she was dreaming. This morning she had been facing discharge from the military in disgrace. Tonight she was being offered the chance of a lifetime. Yes," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Yes, I want to do this." Sullivan smiled, the first genuinely warm expression she had ever seen from him. "Good report to my office tomorrow. At 0600 we have a lot of work to do." As Maria left the debriefing room, she felt like she was walking on air. In the hallway, she passed a janitor emptying trash cans, a task she had been doing just hours earlier. The man nodded respectfully to her, soldier to soldier, for the first time in months. Private First Class Maria Rodriguez felt like a real soldier again. More than that, she felt like she was finally on the path she was meant to be on. But as she walked back to her barracks, she couldn't shake the memory of Sergeant Mitchell's parting words. Something told her this victory was just the beginning of a larger battle. 6 months later, Maria Rodriguez stood in the pre-dawn darkness of a different kind of training ground. Instead of pushing a broom, she carried a rifle. Instead of cleaning uniforms, She wore the specialized gear of an elite joint operations unit. The transformation had been remarkable, but it had come at a cost. The training under Commander Sullivan had been the most challenging experience of her life. Physical conditioning that made basic training look like a warm-up, technical skills that required absolute precision, mental preparation for situations that most people couldn't even imagine. But Maria had not only survived, she had excelled. Her natural tactical intelligence, combined with the mental toughness forged during months of humiliation, had made her one of the most promising soldiers Sullivan had ever trained. The mission briefing that morning was classified, but Maria knew it was important. A hostage situation at an embassy in a country she couldn't name, with American lives hanging in the balance. This would be her first real operation, a chance to prove that everything Sullivan and Major Hayes had seen in her was real. As the team prepared their equipment, Sullivan approached her. "You ready for this, Rodriguez?" "Yes, sir," she replied, and meant it. "Good, because I have something for you." He handed her a small, unmarked envelope. "Don't open it now. Open it after the mission, whatever happens." Maria tucked the envelope into her gear, puzzled but focused on the task ahead. The mission itself was a blur of controlled chaos. Insertion by helicopter, tactical movement through hostile territory, and finally, the delicate operation of extracting civilians from a dangerous situation. Maria's role was crucial. She was the communications specialist, responsible for coordinating between the Navy SEAL team and Army support units. When enemy fire erupted from an unexpected position, Maria's quick thinking and tactical awareness saved the lives of 2 team members. When communication systems failed, her technical skills kept the operation from falling apart. And when one of the hostages panicked during extraction, her calm professionalism kept the situation under control. Mission was a complete success. All hostages extracted safely, all team members returning home without serious injury. During the debriefing back at base, Sullivan made an announcement that stunned everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen, effective immediately, Private First Class Maria Rodriguez is being promoted to sergeant and recommended for the Bronze Star for her actions during this operation." The room erupted in applause. Maria felt tears streaming down her face, tears of pride, relief, and vindication. Later, alone in her quarters, Maria remembered the envelope Sullivan had given her. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message in Sullivan's handwriting. "Maria, by the time you read this, you'll have proven what I knew from the first night I watched you training behind the motor pool. You don't belong in this military despite being a woman. You belong in this military because you're a warrior. The broom was never your weapon. This rifle is. Use it wisely." Jack Sullivan. Below the message was a second note. "P.S. Mitchell, Wheeler, and Costa were all discharged from the service last month. Their careers are over. Yours is just beginning." Maria set the letter down and walked to her window. Outside, she could see new recruits going through basic training exercises. Some of them were women, facing the same challenges and prejudices she had once faced. But things were changing. Maria's success had sent ripples through the base and beyond. Other female soldiers were being given opportunities they had been denied. The culture was slowly shifting, one mission at a time. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find a young private, a woman who couldn't have been more than 18 years old. "Sergeant Rodriguez," the girl said nervously. "I'm Private Amanda Foster. I just arrived at the base, and I was wondering, could I talk to you about something?" Maria smiled, remembering her own first days at this base, when she had felt so alone and out of place. "Of course, Private. Come in." As the young woman entered her quarters, Maria noticed something in her eyes. The same determination, the same fire that Maria had carried during her darkest days. "I've heard stories about you, Sergeant," Foster said. About what you overcame here. What can I help you with, Amanda?" "I want to be in combat operations, but they're assigning me to supply duties. They say it's temporary, but ... double quotes." She trailed off, looking discouraged. Maria sat down across from her. "Let me tell you something, Private Foster. Your weapon isn't determined by what they hand you on your first day. Your weapon is your mind, your determination, and your refusal to accept limitations that others try to place on you." She